Mr. Jackson, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you. We'll start here shortly.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, his microphone's off, so he can't be saying nothing. He can hear us if he talks to the mic.
Oh, you're recording everything now?
We're starting it right now. We are recording everybody.
This conference will now be recorded.
But it'll pick up a mouse fart in the corner of the room.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it's real good. One night I was mumbling something. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean I was just whispering something and it totally. Yeah, yeah.
Always have been?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable, Sean?
My seat's fine.
Okay.
Got about 3 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be.
Okay, it's a little after 7. Let's go ahead and get started, please. To begin with, we do have a quorum. Everyone's here except Francois. Do we know if she's maybe online or on the phone? Okay, thank you. All right, we do have a quorum, however. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we need to take a look at the agenda. I would like to ask that following the two public hearing cases, 4A and 4B, that we would recess briefly so that the Board of Supervisors can take up these two cases, after which we will then reconvene. Is there any other suggestion, comment, or question about the agenda? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the amended agenda, please? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we need to review the minutes from the August 3rd, 2022 workshop meeting. See if there's any question on those. They look very complete and well done as usual. All right, if there's no question or change, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved, second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, the two public hearings. We will, as always, read the case. Ligon will present any information and answer questions from the Planning Commission. The applicant will have an opportunity to address the Planning Commission and answer questions or ask questions and make comments. Following that, if there are any comments from the public, there will be time for that. Okay, case number SU-09-22-20. Kathleen and Marshall Jenkins have applied to subdivide an existing 277.7 acre A1 agriculture zoned parcel. The subdivision would create 3 new parcels and 1 residue parcel. The new parcels would be 18 acres, 42.6 acres, and 126.5 acres, and the residue parcel would be 90.4 acres. The subject parcel has not been subdivided in the previous 10 years, and future subdivision rights would be exhausted for a minimum of 10 years from the date of recordation. The subject parcel contains 2 single-family dwellings addressed as 1573 and 1361 James City Road, Riva, Virginia, and is identified on Madison County's tax map as 33-3. All right, Ligon, would you fill us in?
Yeah, real quick. So this survey is a little bit revised. There are some on the drain fields, some of the contours had to be changed from the original survey. So I did talk to Emily from the health department. She was just verifying that right now on the new survey. So she said everything looks good, that she'll probably give me a the approval letter, or what we normally get from them the next day or two. Other than that, on lot B, the one drain field does go a little bit into that right of way, according to the survey. but I went down there and looked at it. The travel path, you look at the road, it's about 12 feet of gravel. So that, it's on the edge of the drain field. And that particular drain field is still well off the travel path, 12 feet roughly. So I don't see any issue with that. The other thing is that there are two existing driveways. I didn't get a picture of the other one. But the two existing driveways, there are no issues with, more, each one serving two lots. Well, actually, one would serve one, I believe, and one would serve three, but you can see VDOT looked at it and didn't have any heartburn or issue over these shared driveways.
Okay. Any question for Ligon?
So I guess, it could just be approved pending health department. We'll get that in a few days and then we can
So
sign it off. Yep.
we have the VDOT letter, but we don't have health department sign off.
Yeah. They should have that to me in a couple of days, they said.
Are both driveways opening on the same road, or are they?
Yeah. They're both on James City. That's right.
Any other question for Ligon on this? All right, so if we act on this tonight, we'll have to be acting without the health department approval then.
Right. So, I mean, I think we changed that. Well, I guess it was a year ago that we could, we had done it before, but approve with the condition that we get the health department approval, which again should be coming. I did call Emily Borden from the health department this afternoon just to see where they were, and she said should have that letter to me any day now.
Okay, any other? Yes, Pete.
Steve, I think as long as part of the motion is that it has to have that letter, I don't see anything wrong with this.
Okay. So we'll do it as
I don't see anything wrong with it.
pending the health department. Any other questions for Ligon? Do we have the applicant here? Do you wish to address the planning commission?
If y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have a question for the applicant? I guess not. This is pretty straightforward, it looks like. Thank you. Okay. Any comment from the public on this? All right. If not, do we want to follow along with Pete's suggestion and make a motion to approve this pending the health department approval?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number SU-09-22-20 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval pending the letter from the health department.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, case number OA-09-22-21, amending the zoning ordinance, specifically adding an Article 8-2-11 listed as mini storage units, a use allowable by special use permit in the B1 Business Zoning District. Further amending Article 20 definitions and adding an Article 20-120B listed as mini storage units. Mini storage units would be defined as follows: a structure or group of structures containing separate storage spaces leased or rented as individual leases for the purpose of storing property and household goods. Many storage units are also commonly known as self-storage units or moving or storage facilities. Ligon, this is also something that we've covered some before. So.
Yeah, I'll just remind everyone that this is special use permit. I think it's just adding a use that is commonly found in most business uses. We had the storage facilities and, I think that's what has been used in the past, which is okay. I just think this is an easier way to deal with the potential. I was talking to one individual that had an idea for mini storage on South 29, but I haven't heard from him since, but I still think it's a good ordinance to move along with. If we do get a proposal, we could evaluate it by special use permit in business. So I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Any question for Ligon on this? Okay. Do we have any public comment on this? Okay, I guess not. In that case, can I have a motion concerning this case?
Somebody do it. Well, I'll do it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of case number, I've got to get my glasses to see this, 0A-0922-21.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Aye. One opposed? Okay, Daniel. All right. Having done those two, could I hear a motion for a recess so that we can let the Board of Supervisors go into session to hear these two cases, and then we will proceed with the rest of our agenda.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Supervisors meeting will come to order. Let the record show that we do have a quorum. Mr. Jackson is unable to be here in person tonight, so he would like to join remotely. So could I get a motion to allow Mr. Jackson to attend remotely?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Yao.
Further
point of
discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Point of clarity from our attorney, do they need to cite any specifics of the section that allows for it, or are they fine?
I believe the better approach would be to, I thought we had actually prepared a motion for this.
Yeah,
They
we did.
they had that. I just
Okay.
want to point of
All right.
clarity.
Just read the motion and cite the statutory reference.
Very well.
All right, thank you. I, Jim Jewett, hereby move to permit Clay Jackson to attend the September 7th, 2022 meeting of the Madison County Board of Supervisors remotely pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-370.2 and Section 2.4.f of the bylaws of Madison County.
Second.
Very well. We have a motion and a second to allow Mr. Jackson to attend remotely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote since he is remote, so there'll be no question. Mr. Jewett,
Aye.
Mr. Dawson,
Aye.
Ms. Hoffman,
Aye.
chair votes aye, and Mr. Jackson, you abstain.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Very well. All right, so thank you. So the first order of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. If there are no changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Very well, then Mr. Jewett, we do a roll call vote again.
Aye.
Mr. Dawson,
Aye.
Ms. Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
And chair votes aye. The motion passes. So I was just doing a roll call vote because a lot of times when everybody says aye, when somebody's remote, you don't really pick that up. So. Okay, so as always, we begin our meetings with general public comment. Public comment period is not limited to the items on the agenda. We would appreciate you holding it to 3 minutes if you have something that is not on the agenda and you'd like to have public comment on. So is there any public comment at this time? We will do it again at the end of the meeting. All right. Anything online now? That's it? Okay. Very well. We'll close the public comment period. So tonight we have the 2 public hearings. The Planning Commission has made their recommendations. So now it's time for the Board of Supervisors to take up the cases. The protocol will be the same as Planning Commission. I'll read the case and ask for any further comments from the planner. Come back to the board for any questions, then to the applicant, back to the board for questions of the applicant, and then to the public, and then back to the board for further comment, discussion, or motion. So the first case, number SU-09-22-20, Kathleen and Marshall Jenkins have applied to subdivide an existing 277.7 acre A1 agriculture zone parcel. The subdivision would create 3 new parcels and 1 residue parcel. The new parcels would be 18 acres, 42.6 acres, and 126.5 acres, and the residue parcel would be 90.4 acres. Subject parcel has not been subdivided in the previous 10 years, and future subdivision rights would be exhausted for a minimum of 10 years from the date of recordation. The subject parcel contains 2 single-family dwellings addressed as 1573 and 1361 James City Road, Riva, Virginia, and is identified on Madison County's tax map as 33-3. So you got anything further on that, Mr. Webb?
No, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Webb from the board? All right, to the applicant.
If you have any questions, we have to answer your questions.
Any questions of the applicant from the board? No questions.
Thank you.
And to the public. All right, very well. We'll come back to the board for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number SU-09-22-20 as presented.
Second.
Second.
Very well. And we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by the Planning Commission, which does include the contingency on receiving the VDH approval letter. So again, any further discussion? Very well. Roll call vote once again. Mr. Jewett,
Aye.
Mr. Dawson,
Aye.
Ms. Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Motion passes. All right, the second case number is OA-09-22-21, amending the zoning ordinance, specifically adding an Article 8-2-11 listed as mini storage units, a use allowable by special use permit in the B1 Business Zoning District. Further amending Article 20, which is definitions, and adding an Article 20-120B listed as mini storage units. Mini storage units would be defined as follows: a structure or group of structures containing separate storage spaces leased or rented as individual leases for the purpose of storing property and household goods. Mini storage units are also commonly known as self-storage units or moving or storage facilities. Anything further on this, Mr. Webb?
No, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Webb?
Mr. Chairman, I have one just clarification point.
Okay.
At present, if someone wants to do this, they have to rezone to M1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And apply for a special use permit.
I'm pretty sure that's correct too. I forget, but yeah, I think that's right. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Webb? Okay, very well. Let's go to the public. Any public comment on this amendment? All right, very well. Back to the board for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have one additional question for Mr. Webb or the Planning Commission. What is the origin of this proposal? Was it a request by local businesses?
Right. One was when we did I think the Fishback Road mini storage units. It just sort of seemed like going to industrial, and of course he eliminated everything. He eliminated all the by right uses, and I take that back. I think rezoning in M1 it is a by right use, and it's called storage units, and it's not defined. So I think it's an okay way to proceed, but it's just to me a little cleaner, a little straightforward to just give it really what it is, mini storage units, the proper name. Someone had approached the county about it a few months ago, and it's been something that's come up several times. I kept saying we need to put that on the to-do list and just add this, redefine it, give it really its proper name, and put it as a special use in business where I think most ordinances you'll find it. So that was sort of the background how we got here. That person since doesn't seem to be interested in mini storage units, and that's okay. I just think it's something that if it does come around again, I don't think none of us are going to fall out of our seats of the beauty of mini storage units, but it is could be in the proper spot on 29. It could be a use that I think by special use, screening, buffering, and all those things could be something that we might be in favor of approving. So that's the long of it, I guess.
Yeah, at first, when I first looked at it, I thought, why wouldn't it be by right in B1? But then, like, wait a minute, the B1 we have out there, we would be able to include some discretion as a special use on this. So any further discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number 0A-09-22-21. And I believe that's OA, not 0A, for approval.
Yeah, ordinance, yeah. Very well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the OA-09-22-21. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, well, by roll call vote, Mr. Jewett,
Aye.
Mr. Dawson,
Aye.
Ms. Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye, and motion carries. Okay, that's it for the cases tonight. So the next item on the agenda, do we have any information in correspondence? Okay, we have no information. Now, the discussion, the detail for the discussion is on the Planning Commission's agenda, which begins with Ms. Jennifer Little, the planner from Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission, and Mr. Webb are going to tag team on our 2023 comprehensive plan update and the proposed process and timeline. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you and Ms. Little.
I'll go first,
Oh,
I
you
guess.
Reconvene.
Yeah, I'm sorry, reconvene.
All right, yeah, the Planning Commission will now reconvene.
Yeah, such that both bodies are in session.
Okay, thank you. I will, if you see in your packet, agenda 5A, have a 6-page proposal that Ms. Little and I put together, and I'll introduce her. Jennifer is a planner with the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission, And as you know, every 5 years, the state code requires the municipalities, localities to update their comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan, sort of like a blueprint for the future. There's several elements that are required, not a whole bunch, but several things that are required to be in the comprehensive plan. Of course, the 5 years comes up in 23. So we're ahead of the game. That's no question. We're not going to, some communities, won't name some, but I know some local communities, sometimes they just simply forget. I think we've said there's not a comprehensive plan police that go around and say, hey, you didn't update your comprehensive plan in this year. That being said, I think it's actually kind of fun process. We do the day-to-day stuff that tends to get a little monotonous and all the details, where it's a comp plan. There really is no right or wrong way to do it. There's a lot of different formats out there, and what Jennifer and I are trying to do, in her background in comprehensive planning and with the commission, as I looked at our plans as a planning commission, the workload for the next 4 or 5 months, I'm already kind of booking January public hearings. So I think having some expertise from the outside is going to be really nice, and obviously still utilize the skill of the Plan Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and have the general public come in as well, but really be able to use her guidance, and hopefully I can help too, to put together a comprehensive plan, and most importantly, a process that we can follow for the next year. So, when I started in 19, I was kind of happy that the 2018 comprehensive plan had been updated, because I didn't really want to start right in, learn the job, the ropes, while also trying to write a comprehensive plan for a community I haven't spent a lot of time in. I think since 19, especially since the pandemic, we all sort of feel, and we can see it in the public hearings, that things have kind of changed a little bit. That there have been a lot of real estate activity, second home buying. We see the tourism. So, my feeling is this is a good time to sort of look into the future, to what Madison could be, and really put together a blueprint, hopefully, that we can follow. And again, it's a guide. It's not a codified ordinance. It's just simply a guide. We like to follow that guide, but there could be instances, even with the current plan, that you deviate based on maybe some rational decision, or it doesn't necessarily particularly, approve or deny a single project that might come before you, but it is a good background. So if you look at what we have here, and what we try to come up with is there's 2 parts to this document. One is what the plan might look like. If you look at the 2018 plan, I think it's a nice plan. The regional district did a lot of the data. They weren't really too involved necessarily in the plan parts. And my only criticism of it, and it's minor, it kind of jumps a little bit around, maybe more than I would prefer. You have some of the goals, you have some demographic data, then you have a vision statement, and then some goals and objectives. But I think it really could all be coordinated and tie in a little maybe more fluid. And again, that's not a criticism, just kind of a hope for as we update this in 2023. So if you look at the first few pages, we talk about the plan foundation. We'll talk about, in the actual plan, why it's required. You give a little, overview. And again, this is after the process is finished, the timeline, what the role, the input process, acknowledgement of the folks who helped. In the second part, this is, important part, is the background facts and existing conditions. And the current plan has a very nice summary of background facts. And there's so many ways in which you can sort of analyze the community, from population growth to, we can look at building permits, we can look at, payroll data. There's just so many sources out there that are just pretty mind-blowing. The housing data, different things that I think that we can sort of show, this is where Madison was, this is sort of where we're going, and this may be where we think we might be going. And the third part is the vision statement. And that to me should come before your actual plan. That's actually going to lead the plan. And if you look at our timeline, and I won't jump too far ahead, but I like our vision statement from 2018, and we might just find out that our vision in 2018 might be a lot like would be in 2022, 23. But I do think it would be a good opportunity to revisit that. And I do have an exercise that I've done several times with vision statements. That's really, quite honestly, kind of fun to get Plan Commission, maybe invite citizens in. We'll sit down, sort of brainstorm, and I always say, 20 years from now, if you're just riding through Madison, what will it look like? If you had an ideal, we're not worried about money, we're not worried about anything. We're going to say, what would that Madison look like? You kind of start throwing ideas out, putting words in write words down. Then you kind of slowly develop that into but I sort of like that idea. Think about Madison 20 years. What would be the ideal? So I think we could come up with a new revised vision statement. The fourth thing is plan elements. And again, the only thing that we're required is a affordable housing and a manufactured housing element, I do believe. Otherwise, you're sort of given free rein, and communities do different things to analyze our land, where do we want to grow. I think we've already talked about the Fishback Road corridor. We might want to be very specific. The last plan was pretty general, but we could get down to very specific areas. This is where we see the county growing. These are how the villages might grow. Same thing with transportation and mobility. Look at housing. Economic factors and employment is another one. Recreation, community facilities, and utilities. I think, again, I just said throw in the Hoover Park Master Plan as an element of this plan. What are some of the community facilities we might want to see in the future? Again, we're just dreaming here in the long term. Utilities. I do think that this is from a long-term perspective is a conversation that the county should have during the comp plan. Is right now we have a utility system that has 160, 70 customers. What is our vision? What is the citizens' vision of our utility system? Is it something that if we do see growth in or around this village or Madison town and Madison, would it make sense that it be on utilities? And what questions does that bring up? Community design and built environment. I have a great book in my office called Rural by Design that talks about, I just kind of threw this one as one personally that I sort of like is looking at ways to develop, just like a commercial development. Look at things like parking lots. Does a commercial development have to have a parking lot in front? Could you park in the rear? And maybe you have landscaping to separate uses, and maybe the commercial building sets in the front, parking in the rear. Just all sort of scenarios I think we can kind of examine and look at during the comprehensive plan that we could say to developers, hey, you want to develop on 29, here's a blueprint of what we like this to look like. We don't want to see big neon signs 50 feet in the air. We like to see monument style signs with landscaping, maybe parking that is, I always like rear parking, but just different ways to maybe kind of beautify the county and maybe make it look like everywhere else you might drive through. So there's another sort of topic area that I thought would be a good one. And on the timeline, and you can see we put together a very essentially a year timeline, and from now till I would say if we get the go ahead to start to move forward with this, is work with Jennifer to start doing working with the commission to figure out what are those plan elements going to be. We put out some suggestions I think would be good ones, but start collecting data, start doing the demographics, start looking at those things. It really wouldn't take very long, but say maybe a couple months to sort of start looking at the county, taking this to the plan commission. Hey, this is what our building permits look like. This is what our land use has been. This is how much new folks have moved in the county or moved out of the county. This is our employment trends. And then probably end of this fall, October, as you can see, number 2 on page 4, start get that vision statement, and maybe having the plan commission. I'm thinking 2 groups, each group maybe be assigned a particular plan element. This group, from the middle down, however you want to do it, they're going to look at land use and environment, transportation, mobility, and housing. The other group is going to look at the other 3 or 4 things that we're examining in the plan, and then going over goals and strategies. And that will probably be a 3 or 4 month session, just going over what are some goals and strategies for each of these different plan elements. And then 3, and this is probably, if you see my nice little picture on page 5, once we come up with the goals and strategies for each of these little elements, then take it to the public. I did this in Luray. It was very successful. Show people hey, this is the growth area. Here are the maps. This is what we might commercial development look like. Here's the Hoover Ridge Park Master Plan, and get people to go through station by station and comment, fill out a survey, put their comments, and then we can compile that. So 2 or 3 nights, maybe we have some sort of community work session, and that would sort of be the capstone of the whole comp plan. Then after that, break back down, work on those goals and objectives, and then you can see 4 and 5 is, again, continue to work with the plan commission, come together with the first rough draft. I'd say probably roughly in a year, and then adoption October, maybe a little over a year from now. I just talked a lot. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to kind of go over that whole that document, and sort of. We're not saying the plan commission is not involved, absolutely involved, but I guess the way I envision it is that, maybe the staff, Jennifer and I, bring some things, plan commission and their 2 groups, work on it, chew it up, send it back to us. We revise it, we bring it back. Okay, this looks good. This is what we're thinking of. Then we go to the next thing. All along the way, we're kind of building up to that community work session at some point in the spring, where we invite people in to come in and say, hey, look, this is what we think the vision of the future could look like of Madison. Tell us what you think. I would read the summary there at the end, but I think the summary, and Jennifer really wrote that. I think it is really, really written very well. Jennifer, you want to say anything? So I'll let Jennifer give a few comments, but I think this document, 6 pages, we really tried to kind of right out the gate, set the expectation, give you a guide that we can follow, and hopefully everybody will be on board.
Yeah, we have a microphone over there for you. Thank you. Is it on, Lee?
Testing. All right,
Okay.
it's on.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Jennifer Little. I work at the Rappahannock-Rappahannock Regional Commission, and Ligon did reach out and asked if I would be willing to help with this next round on the comprehensive plan update, and I am delighted to do so. As Ligon spoke, we're investigating the different areas that we can update on this comprehensive plan. And we wanted to make sure that it really embraced the values and the vision that Madison County residents have. As we go through the process, this is a really great opportunity for you to bring to our attention areas that you feel that need to be addressed, whether it's housing issues, economic issues, transportation issues, the whole gamut. Anything that you would like to see in the plan, this is a really good opportunity to direct it towards us so that we can investigate it. As we're going through our data analysis process, we will be looking at the trends and what the gaps are in the data, and then see what we can bring back to you that gives you some good foundational information for applying towards the final product. I'm I'm trying to think. There were a few other things that we've talked about, but this really, if you have any great questions, now would be a good time to start as we move through this process. Any and all questions can be directed through Ligon, and he will happily pass them on to me.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, Ligon, would you be ready for our next workshop to maybe start looking at the formation of the two working groups then?
Yeah, I think that's something that,
Get that in place.
we could think about the next workshop. Really, the next couple months, as I see it, is just sort of putting some data together. And I will say, what really kind of got me thinking this way is, one, we have an incredibly busy workload for the next 6 months. So we really just really need some outside help for the commissioners and myself in the board. One is when I was working with Jennifer, I guess it was, what was it on? We were doing something, and I said, "This looks really great." She put together some data for I forget housing strategies, and it just sort of got my wheels going and thinking about our workload, thinking we really could use this resource here to. So I think maybe the next meeting we could, think about those two groups, look at this list that I have for the plan elements, and really go what Jennifer really did. I thought was good. Look at other communities' comprehensive plans. Some are just old documents that they just update every few years and slap approved and maybe change a few things. Some are actually, they hire really big time consultants and spend lots of money and visuals and pictures. I think we're probably doing somewhere in between. We're not spending lots of money, but I think we're getting a good product for a very reasonable, and that's why I think engaging the regional commission, I think is by far the best approach. So look at those elements, maybe by the next meeting. If there's something you want to add, we try to give each one a good description, but if there's something else out there to be added or taken out, feel free to bring that to us and we can talk about that next workshop. But
does anyone else have a question or comment for Ligon?
I think I want to say
Okay,
something. Just that having gone through the last one, so I'm aware of the process and what we need to come up with. I would just like to remind us all, seems to be a pet peeve of mine lately, that we all make sure that this product, since it's supposed to be for all of the citizens of the county, that we keep that in mind, not just any particular isolated group or any. In other words, and it also cannot become mine alone or anybody else's. It needs to be a working effort and not any one group or one entity that might want to have more. We have to be careful that we don't assume that because it's my idea, then it's the only one we can consider. We've done a good job of that mostly so far, but every once in a while we get hung up on our own, our own ownership of things. And yes, it's fine to fight for something or to really speak strongly for something that you really believe in. But at the same time, this should come out to be not anyone's document. It's Madison County's document. And as we go through, this not be offended or not be hurt or whatever as we go through this. And I hope that can happen. And I would be very happy if that can happen.
Very good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very initial thing at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Pete, you have a...
This will be the third time I've done this. I think it's kind of important. Of course, it's up to the commission, it's up to you, it's up to the board, but I think it's kind of important to meet as a group and not split in half. Because I don't know what that half of the group is talking about, what they're saying. They don't know what we're talking about and what we're saying. And I think if we meet as a group, we always know what's going on throughout, rather than trying to catch up on corners at the end.
Lots of meetings.
right. Yeah, that's my only, is that the group would always, if you did break up into two smaller groups, it would always come back to the main, everyone here to review what has been done. I don't really have a big preference. I mean, working in front of whether everyone's fine. I just think it's a little easier if we have two smaller groups that, we could have those 5 o'clock meetings in some cases and meet I know we can meet here. Sometimes we met at the Literary Council. We could, of course, the public will always be invited to attend, but that's really a decision of the commission.
You're gonna have two smaller groups, you still gotta advertise.
Oh, sure. We'll put it, on our website and like we always do, and let people know and let the media and all those folks know. But I think the two smaller groups would probably would work a little more efficiently. But ultimately that's kind of y'all's decision how you want to do it.
And that's something that we can deal with at the workshop meeting when we.
But my fear is just that we literally have so many things coming up. I just don't, I don't want this to become a full-time job for anyone. It's
going to be. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, Steve, at the last meeting or meeting before that, you asked for input, written input from individual commissioners, which I thought was a good idea.
I got some from you.
And I don't know how many others you got, but I think it would really be helpful, Jennifer and Ligon, if as an initial step, everybody that was interested in doing so wrote down in more than paragraph form, rather detailed, where they see this county going over the next 5 years and beyond. And I think that would be a catalyst if we were to do that for group discussion, because we would then have something concrete to talk about rather than starting in a meeting or a couple of meetings, and everybody talking and we go home and haven't resolved anything. So that would be what I would propose, that individual commissioners start out and I suppose reading the last comprehensive plan might trigger some thoughts, but they ought to be, thoughts coming from all of the individual commissioners that were interested in providing those thoughts, and then this kind of group discussion, I think, would be a lot more meaningful.
Good points. Any other comments?
Comments from the board? Any questions for Ms.? I've sat in and listened to Ms. Little's presentation to begin with, so I think I understand the process that she and Ligon have presented. Everybody good with that? Okay.
All right. If there's any other comments on? Any more comments up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, other than thank you for being here. So again, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors are both in session at the same time tonight for the following discussions. So as I see it, Mr. Chairman, our goal for tonight in discussing 5B, C, and D would be for us to walk out of here tonight pretty much knowing what we're going to advertise to the public on these issues, if we advertise at all. So I suggest we take these one at a time. Planning Commission goes, y'all discuss. There's just some minor items on each one, really. Y'all discuss it, and then we'll discuss, and then back to you for the next item. How's that?
Okay.
Does that sound good for you guys? All right.
Okay. That being the case, 2 out of the 3, I think we can probably work through pretty quickly. D is probably going to have some additional discussion. B is the review of the short-term lodging amendments. And I'm not sure we need to actually read all of that. It's right in front of us. Does anyone have a question or comment?
Yeah.
Or Ligon, you have a
I'll
comment?
just make one comment on short-term lodging. I appreciate the work that everyone, the committees did. Peter did. Looking at communities and I'll say it again, some places don't have any regulations at all, short-term lodging, so you just can do it and, pay occupancy tax. Everyone has to get a special use permit. Now, I don't like the latter because we might as well just have a separate meeting every month for a single short-term lodging. That's all we would do. I mean, we've got 100 and whatever in the county, and so this is a policy that I just sort of, because we didn't really have a policy, just sort of evolved. And when I've gone and spoken to other communities or talked to other folks and said, well, what does Madison do? I said, well, it's informal, but I think we're going to adopt it is if you have one single rental on a single parcel, it's by right. If you have a second one, then it's a special use permit. And so far, everyone who I've ever talked to said they really like that idea. So again, I think it's sort of a little bit of a middle ground. We're not making everyone that comes in has a single short-term rental go through a special use process, but if you're going to sort of up zone a property and have a couple on a single parcel, then I think it's a good, reasonable policy, and it regulates it, but yet we're not asking everyone to come in front of us for a special use permit. But of course, we do collect that transit occupancy tax.
Okay, I'd like to add a little bit to that. A lot of the discussion on this has been centered on things like bed and breakfast, Airbnbs, and that type of thing. But there's another component of this, which I think was really the impetus for starting it, which is we have had some interest from several people in standalone structures on larger acreages, so they're well within the 1 unit on 3 acres for cottages, short-term rental units for tourists, things like that, where they stay a week or something like that out in the country. We've had, in the past year, we've had at least one of these that's come before us. And one or two anyway.
Yep.
And at any rate, there was nothing specifically addressing that. And this would address that particular type of situation as well, not just the bed and breakfast and the rooming, somebody living in an Airbnb or something like that for a week. So there's also that involved with the short-term lodging unit. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I would just observe that we have been discussing this proposal initiated by Ligon for 7 or 8 months now.
Mm-hmm.
And Ligon and I collaborated on the ultimate language. I am not aware that there is any opposition to this language from the commissioners. But if there is, then that's fine. If there is, I think tonight's the night to put it on the table rather than waiting for our next meeting.
Well, I'll bring it up first.
Okay, Danny.
Item number 7, page 3. We voted that not to include. So why is it back on here?
Okay, which one are we talking about?
Talking about
Owner occupancy, owner of the primary dwelling and
That's-
the ADA unit must
This is not.
That's-
occupy either the primary dwelling or the ADU unit.
Yeah, that's the,
That's the ADU.
that's not the short-term rental.
That's not the short term.
Yeah,
Oh,
different.
nobody wanted to get that.
Okay,
We will
We'll-
get to that one.
we'll know ahead of time. Okay. You'll be first. All right. Any other comment on the short-term rental unit from the planning commission? As Peter said, this one I think is pretty well hashed out. Do you have any?
Well, to the board on this, what do you got?
The only thing I have a question about is does 30 days seem light? I don't know. Like traveling nurses, they've got to sign for 90 days at a time.
Right, but that would be long-term. So that wouldn't be subject to, the big thing wouldn't be subject to transient occupancy tax if it's more than 30 days. So if you rent it for more, if you rent it for 40 days, the state considers that to be a long-term rental. So, but far majority of what we're talking about here are people who are using the apps, the VRBO, the Airbnb, or different apps. That's where far majority of them are. And, it's kind of interesting to think, Madison, I guess, doesn't have a hotel. We do have some, I guess, before the apps became a thing 5-6 years ago, you would have had some short-term lodging, but now we've got hundreds,
Yeah.
But that also creates issues in other realms that we'll talk about in a minute. But
So they cannot rent for more than 30 days.
oh, they could rent for more than 30 days, but
Okay.
they would not be subject to occupancy tax if
Okay.
it was more. Right.
That answers my question.
That's the key. It really has to do with the tax structure and the applicability of the transient occupancy tax.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So let me be clear on this. Under the current policy, let's say, for example, I had 20 acres or 50 acres, and there are 3 homes on it, including mine. So now I have 2 that I want to use as Airbnb. So currently, I don't have to do anything other than pay the tax. Is that correct?
No. So in what we've been doing is in A1, I believe, lodging and hotels of special use. So we've been making folks that have more than one right now come and get a special use permit. And I think it's an okay way to do it that way, but this is just being more clear, I guess, with our policy. So right now, we're kind of working under this assumption that if you just have one, we're allowing folks, and a lot of people out there have them. We probably got 150 in the county. It's just when you have that second one, to me, I think you sort of go from, I don't know, not that 1 and 2. It's it's one more, but I think you get more into then we're talking about traffic and neighbors, and you've got more than several guests coming to your property. So in the last year, I know we've had 2 special use permits in A1 for folks that had larger parcels that had more than one short-term rental. So we've still been making them get the special use.
Okay, so within a given year, how many times are you approached by someone requesting a special use permit because they have more than one short-term rental?
Well, I think I know we've done 2 in the last year. I mean, we get a lot of inquiries. They're going, and we got in the future, we got several more coming. So it's out there for sure.
Has the current policy created any persistent or unusual problems?
No, I don't know.
The reason I'm asking is that if things are working fairly well, why do we need to change it?
Well, because this is the policy we're working under, and I don't think our code clearly states what I think in my humble opinion, what it should state. I think it should articulate what we are practicing. I think it'd be good if it really just stated that clearly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's a good question.
Anything else from the board? Okay, to the public. Anybody in the public have a comment on this? All right, very well. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Is the consensus of, excuse me, Cardy or,
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
Ms. Carpenter, is the consensus at this point to go to public hearing on that short-term rentals?
As far as the planning commission, I think, yes, we're ready for that.
Would members of the board, y'all think, are we ready to go to public hearing? They're gonna have one more
Right.
workshop on this on the 21st, but
It'll be October 5th one.
yeah.
Right. Be a month.
It'll be presented in a little more formal format at that point.
But you would have, if I may, would you have advertised for the public hearing on the 5th, even before the workshop is had?
I think the ad goes in the next 2 weeks, so it has to go the last two. It'll be in the paper the last 2 Thursdays, which is the 22nd and 29th of September. It'll be in the paper.
Third Wednesday, whatever.
The workshop's 21st, so it'll be in the paper next day.
So is the board comfortable with this being what we advertise? Mr. Jackson? Are you?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think by having the workshop with both boards present, which is the current discussion, we need to kind of agree or disagree whether or not we proceed with these going to public hearing. This one certainly should.
I think so. Planning commission, y'all want?
Any objection to that?
Got something?
No, I have no objections, but I haven't decided on how we'll vote.
Right.
Let me just be fair.
Fine.
Yeah. Yeah, we have had, well, I can give you an example. As you go up towards Syria, there are 4 or 5 yurts out in the field. Those, as far as I know, were those ever looked at for anything, or they just appeared?
I can't say I think about the one that was on oh gosh, yeah, they have the yurt. Yeah, they did that. They came. They have 4. They have
There's
yeah.
Okay, and how were they permitted?
I think it's the one on, I forget what road it's on, but didn't they come in about a year ago for the special use permit? They have
No,
a
they've been
house.
there longer than that.
No, that was Judd and Lisa Buchanan.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
the Deers, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one. I mean,
Right,
it's-
James?
Steer.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been there for quite some
Wouldn't-
time.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't
15 years ago.
wouldn't the option on those be grandfathering essentially, since they've been in place? We certainly should know whether or not we granted a special use permit for those. But at this point, they've been in existence for certainly almost 10 years, if not more. And that would give you the legislative decision or discretion to go ahead and call them grandfather.
Yeah, that wasn't, I wasn't questioning them. I was just pointing out that we already have this kind of situation with nothing in the ordinance to deal with it at this point. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
Of the planning commission and the board of supervisors, probably not a bad idea to find the history of what happened with those 10 years ago. I mean, we should certainly have records of that.
Jones
I'm
was
guessing
working
that
on
was during Mr. Shackelford's tenure.
I can't remember it ever being in front of the planning commission. I'm gonna work on it right now. I'm showing GIS, they were built in 2010. I remember them coming out, just give me a chance to search the minutes and.
But we can, that'll give me some homework.
yeah, I mean, I was only using those as an example. I mean, we had another example where they did come before us over on Lillard's Ford Road, where they had a farm and they had a converted outbuilding and an old barn that they converted and another
And a
structure they were
cabin,
going to build a cabin. Yeah. So,
Yeah, Tri Creek.
so these things are existing and we need something to deal with them, I think. Okay, any other comment on that before we've beaten it to death? All right. All right, that brings us to the private road subdivisions, which has quite a few suggested amendments to it. This was a fairly
Did you skip over Sester Drive?
No, we've got that as the
What's
last,
next?
Okay. Okay. We will not skip it. We're going to get to it. I think, again, absolutely no point in reading all of this because the majority of it is unchanged. We can, Ligon has it written out so that we can see the changes or the amendments that have been suggested. I guess, why don't we just go ahead and look at the one thing that's going to require discussion, Ligon? What do you think? The only thing that's really going to require discussion is the change from 4 to 8 as recommended.
Yeah, I think that there's sort of 3 parts to this, and I put the whole subdivision ordinance in there. Didn't have to put it all, but I just want to, it's out there. You know, this is something we started almost last fall, and my sort of initial suggestion that maybe we look into this was there was one subdivision that had it sort of laid out where you could do 5 on a road. The other one could, you remember there were a total of 2 separate, Mr. Coates.
Right.
He had 5 and 3. It really just sort of way the land laid. It just made sense for the road to have 5, one road to have 5, one to have 3. That's a by right subdivision. So it sort of starts the conversation. Well, you know, should we look into the whole 4 and 1 rule, 4 on 1? You know, the 4 on 1 rule is it's been, I guess, around since we've had the subdivision ordinance, at least for quite a while. Generally, I think it's a fine rule. Every community has a little different take on this. I think we said Orange you could have up to 10 on a private drive. I think they're changing that now to 7. If I understand Culpeper correctly, they don't really have a limit on private drive as long as it's
15. 15, but they have what they call minor subdivisions and major subdivisions, and the minor ones up to 15, and the major ones are larger.
Yeah, every
and then it
community-
becomes a state highway.
Right. Everyone handles it a little different when it comes to private before you go to a state maintained road. And a lot of these small rural developments, the state road tends to be a burden. And I'd say often you look at a lot of the private roads in the county and rural areas, most are maintained pretty well. Some aren't, but most, they're only as good as the people who that are on the road that want to maintain. So that's why we sort of ventured this into maintenance agreements, standards for construction. I think did a very good job. We've been working on it for almost a year, and we've had a lot of meetings. I think it reads very well. So thanks everyone who's put the effort. But the question really comes down is one, we know there are a lot of subdivisions out there that don't conform to this. I always say the subdivision is like a jigsaw puzzle. You just sort of put it out there. We don't always know the history of every drive and why this got this way and when this was done. You've got a lot of grandfather lots that were done before we had a subdivision ordinance. So it's kind of a hodgepodge, but for the most part, as the zoning administrator, that's the first thing we look at. Is there more than 4 on this private drive? And if so, you can't subdivide. So the idea is to maybe potentially look into, I don't know if we call it loosening it up, but I think if you combine it with the private road maintenance agreements that we're going to require, the construction standards that we have here in the quoted soil and conservation manual. If you look at those things, I think we've tried to increase, if the idea is to increase this, then we really want to be formal on what's required for private roads that are extended or new private roads. We want a maintenance agreement. The ones that have good maintenance agreements that have landowners that are willing to participate, again, I think work very well. So the meat and potatoes of this to me is 4.8-3. I think that one, 4.8-3 is where it says, Private roads shall serve no more than 4 lots now. The Plan Commission did recommend 8. I know it was, kind of divided on that. Again, looking at this every day, I think, just my humble opinion is I think 6 might be a little bit of the, not the whole loaf of bread, maybe a little bit of the loaf, and we kind of move a little bit in that direction and see how this works. If we were to go to 6 or even 8, I don't think we're going to see a radical change or some sort of a huge rush in development. But be clear, it is a change, and that's why me personally, just sort of favor maybe the 6 as a incremental change. But that really, to me, is as it's written, is sort of the, that's the decision that needs to sort of be made. Recommend ultimately by the board, but I think the Plan Commission, at least in the majority, has favored. I could be wrong, but I think it favored the 8.
Okay, well, that's what we want to talk about. Mike, okay, you can go ahead and start off.
Yeah, so just out of clarity of all this, we haven't even done anything with the ADUs yet, but is an ADU going to count as one of these or not?
No, it would be.
It is not.
No.
That's part of the problem.
It's one house, if it's on the property of the house, right?
But it would, according to this, it would be another house. So you would still, right.
But
Going to have could have a separate drive.
Well, if it was a separate,
Couldn't it?
right. Well, part of what we've talked about in this ordinance is if you add another dwelling to a road, then you have to get that maintenance agreement. If you have an extra
That's what I was
dwelling.
wondering
Right.
where this fits in.
Nothing in this, the way it's written right now, allows the sidestepping the 3-acre minimum acreage. The ADU would. So this is based on the 3-acre minimum lot size in A1 and the 10-acre in C1.
right,
At least that was the intent of the committee.
that
I
was the
think. Yeah.
intent.
So that's hopefully, Ligon, do you think?
Well, in 481B, it says subdivisions located on existing private roads in which additional lots and or additional single-family dwellings on existing parcels are introduced in accordance with 483 in this article are subject to the private road maintenance agreement, the standard. So if you put another dwelling, if you have 4 houses on 4 lots, you put another dwelling, before you put that dwelling on there, we would want a road maintenance agreement on that road.
But you're not creating a new lot.
But you're not creating a new
Yeah,
lot.
I was gonna say-
You're not creating a
Yeah.
new lot. You're coming off of the same lot.
Right.
Right.
The key word is lot.
Right.
Are you going to consider the ADU on a separate lot or not?
You can't.
No, it's not a
No, you
separate
can't.
lot.
It's gotta be the same
So
lot.
therefore, we say lot, which means
I thought it was dwelling and not lot.
it says no more than 8 lots. And the last one should be lot. We changed all the dwelling, all the dwelling words should be lots. That's kind of standard. We agreed on that, I think some time ago.
Yeah.
didn't we?
6-2.
I believe 4-8-1B, and I believe this is what's proposed, says subdivisions located on existing private roads in which additional lots and or additional single-family dwellings on existing parcels are introduced or subject to, and then I won't read the balance of it.
Mhm.
The significance of it is I believe that 4-8-1B contemplates that each of these ADUs would count so far as the private road requirement. Am I misreading that, or is that what's
Mhm.
intended?
Which makes that a very valuable question because we have to decide which way we want it to
Yes,
to do.
I agree.
Yeah, that is, and 6-22 talks about as well as far as road standard agreement. So if it is an initial dwelling.
Yeah, and of course, the reason that it's worded that way in 8.1B, I think, is things like the family division where a family member builds another house on a piece of property. But I think that was still.
And that's supposed to count as a
that's
new
still
dwelling.
within
That's a new lot.
Yeah. Or it's got to be on more than or 6 or more acres for that to happen then.
No,
All right, so that's, okay, it looks obviously like we need to spend a little more time on that.
we can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good policy to have, even with ADUs. We're saying, I mean, 481B and 6-22 are saying if you put, it's sort of what Mike Moscow had talked about.
Yeah.
That's what that whole idea was. If you're putting more houses, whether it's an ADU or you build a 2,000 square foot house on a 10 acre, another house, you would be required to get that sort of extra house. You'd be required to maintain that road and get into a maintenance agreement, even if you were the only one that agreed to maintain it. So I don't really,
Right,
I would just consider the ADU a separate sort of conversation. This actually, in my humble opinion, sort of helps to keep the road, make sure the road is maintained.
And actually not just maintained, but brought up to standard
Right.
first.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, in that regard, I think this has happened. It may have happened earlier in the process. You might want to get our public safety people's input in terms
did.
of what they would like. But
Yeah.
We
to
did.
the extent that there was a
I already have
difference here, I would revisit the issue with them.
I have talked to
Yeah.
everybody that was in charge of everything, Noah and fire chief and all that. And
In the event that an ADU is accepted or put into the ordinances, maybe, I think maybe that might be the best approach to look at it, as that additional house would be the same as another dwelling,
Yeah,
like it
and
already
I-
says there.
It's a dwelling. I mean,
Yeah.
it might be a small dwelling, but I still think the kind of if we just kind of stay on the subdivision is, what is that recommended number?
Yeah.
Um,
And see, the other problem with that is that is not actually a subdivision if that happens. An
Right,
ADU does
ADU.
not represent a subdivision of the lot. So, okay.
All right.
Yes.
So the ADU seems to throw a wrench in absolutely everything they're trying to do on anything. But essentially, the reason basically, if somebody takes a piece of land, they divide it into a certain number of lots. I'm going to go ahead and use the number 8, even though I'm for 6, not 8. And you got 8, and they have 8 parcels, and they sell them all out as building lots. And let's say they're 3 acres apiece. And they sell all of them. And the first people start building their houses, and they throw an ADU on there, and you got 8 houses. That last person to build doesn't get to. They bought a building lot, but they just weren't quick enough. Then they don't get to build their house. And so the whole, we had a lot of issue with the dwelling versus lot versus parcel. But, the intention is that's how many lots that can go on there. And the ADU is a separate thing altogether and really can't be counted within that.
Okay.
Was my takeaway.
Nathan, I would say if you had a subdivision, you did 8 parcels, 3 acres. Everyone could build a house. In order to have an ADU, you have to get everyone would have to come and get a special use permit. And then we would probably visit the road, maintenance, and all those type things. So just keep in mind, I agree with you, don't want to maybe mix the two, but that ADU still needs a special use permit.
Yep.
all right.
So,
Okay.
And
Faye, you want to go?
okay.
ahead?
And so since we're talking about the number,
Yes.
I am going to, I'll go on record as saying that I am for the 8. And the reason I feel like that is a good number, a compromise number from even a higher number than others. And I really don't care what Orange says or even what Culpeper says, because they're different counties. They're not small like we are. They have a different way of approaching all of their land in some ways. So this is Madison County's rule. But I look at many of the private roads that I know, private drives that I know about, private roads. They're already 6. They're already 7. The other thing that I'm looking at, I'm really a big protector of those people. And there are still many of them who own farmland in this county. They're trying to hold on. They're trying not to sell it, like 600 acres, like 130 acres, like 250 acres that I just heard about. And it's fine if they sell it and and they rent it out and the person continues to farm it as we do. And that's good. It stays in farmland at least. But a lot of these people, these older folks who have farms, can't do anything more. They don't want to sell the whole farm. They want to sell just a couple of pieces. They already have a drive. They already given children maybe or whatever. I want to preserve that a little bit. And I think going to 8, since so many of our private roads are 6 already, 5 and 6, would give them an opportunity to be a little bit flexible. And it's not just one segment. I think it deals with all of our populations. I'm just looking at the whole county. And I just see a lot of tragedy going on right now. And I see a lot of desperation. And I feel like this would be a big help to a lot of people. And we're making a lot of, what's the word? A lot of accommodations, shall I say, for a whole lot of things. And if you look at this last thing, oh, I lost it. For instance, one of the things I looked into and asked for information about were the number of housing things. Oh, that's the old one. You might not realize 2019 was kind of slow in the county. 2020, it went up to, if I can find it, I would let you know what it is. What amazed me was in 2021, that office, Ligon's office, processed 79, I believe it was, something 70s, 79.
Yeah, it was upper 70s.
Double
Right.
what it was in 2020. Now, 2020, we were shut down. 2020, you couldn't get materials. 2020, people we were sheltering, more or less, most of us. Nobody knew what they wanted to do. In 21, as soon as things started to open, this county more than doubled the number of single-family dwellings that came into this county. Now, every one of those four lots that were sold came out on a public road. And you ride down 230 and you see how many roads you have off of that. And it goes back to maybe one house or 2 or 3 houses or whatever. I think opening this up a little bit will prevent that. So many, especially since so many of these private roads are on farmland already that already has a private drive. And some of these private drives go back to the main farmhouse that are half mile long. They have the acreage and they can handle 8 along the private drive that's already in existence. So that's my reason for holding on to 8 is because of what I see and what I see in the future. I don't know the growth will continue or not. We seem to have slowed down a little bit, but we have a lot of land in our county that's just been sold cash in the last, I'd say 3 or 4 months. And I don't know if Lincoln's seeing any activity on these pieces or not, but I can guarantee you one thing. It's going to come. We don't have any problem approving a 31 unit apartment house somewhere. We don't have any problem where they already own land in zone R1 with them putting houses on it. If it gets to that, we don't have any problem with that. But I just think this is a good way to offer some relief to some of the people who already own land that would like to hold on to it a little bit longer. And we can do that this way without, and I think the point for the numbers, if we want to talk about density, I've said it before and you're tired of hearing it, but I'm the old fashioned person. That horse has already left the barn. And we are so far from that I don't think we need to be as concerned about that. I don't think it's going to change that much of anybody if we increase this. The other thing we're going to get out of this is road upgrade and road maintenance agreement. And we have that in here. So if you want to do it, that's going to stop some people because it will fall on the last person or the first person or whatever to put a new lot on. It's going to fall on them if nobody else wants to sign up. We've already addressed that. You're not going to make anybody sign into this. If they want to, fine. If they want to pay a portion of it, fine. But it's on the one who wants it upgraded the most. And they'll just have to pay it. but you're selling land's at a much higher dollar than it used to be. It's just part of what you do. And the other thing is we're including family divisions in this before they've been sort of. And so this way, family, even if you give and create a new lot for a family member, you will need to follow that ordinance and part of it. So I think compared to the whole thing, we're getting a lot for what we're trying to do here. So,
Pete, I know you had actually some historical information for us.
yes, say that. Tell us that.
I'm a component of the 8, and the reason, there's several reasons I'm a component of the 8. Number one is I talked to Mr. Jones and Mr. Huckman that used to be on the Board of Supervisors for many, many years. And back in the 90s, there was what they call a mini subdivision ordinance that existed. Now, if you go throughout the county, you go out here to Shelby to the Shell station out there, there's a little subdivision back behind there. It's got 8 or 9 houses in it. And when I talked to them, I said, well, why did y'all create this? And they told me, said, the reason this was created, we had people like Ed DeJohnette and Mr. Knighting and different ones throughout the county that were trying to build some houses like Crestview and Happy Hills and Layton Village and places like that. And we were trying to keep the big guys out, and we wanted the little guys to be able to develop some properties. So we had that ordinance, and everybody thought when we put that ordinance in, things would just run wild and building would go everywhere. It never did. Now, I'm not sure about this part of it, but I think it come Mr. Miller along, and he didn't like that, and it got done away with. But we had an ordinance at one time that would allow you to build 8 or 9 houses, and that's why some of the subdivisions that we see come along, it's like the subdivision that's off of Fishback Road there. That little subdivision was done in those times right there. And a lot of these were built, and there was 6 houses put there. There may be 2 lots at the end of it, and when it got changed, 4 came into play, and 2 more couldn't be added to those. So there's a piece of land you can't do anything with. One of the other things that you look at, and I'm like Faye on this, if you're driving down the road and people want to build houses and they're buying 3 or 5 acre lots right off the front of the roadway, here comes a driveway, here comes a driveway, here comes a driveway. Well, if we sold that property and let them put 6 or 8, and I'm a component of the 8 because I don't think 8's going to change the development here in the county whatsoever. I think there's a few subdivisions that might add 1 house that's got 7 there, because if you look around, there's a lot of 6s and a lot of 7s around.
Yep.
But we can bring 8 houses out on that road instead of bringing 1 each time we put a lot on the front. The man sells all his road frontage off because he's got to have a front to get 1 house out of there, and he's got all this land behind it, and he can farm it, but what else can he do with it? He wants to sell it. He wants to develop it. He needs some money to take care of himself at old age. He can't do nothing behind it. So here sits this land behind it with no way for us to get back there and develop it. I think if we change this to 8, you're not going to see it change anything in the county whatsoever. I really don't. I see people's points for 6, but I think 8's not really going to make any difference. I think it's going to put less traffic on the road, and I think it's with the road maintenance agreement we got, I think you're going to have better roads because of the road maintenance agreement to put those 8 houses in there. I just think that 8 would be a good move. I mean, we go with whatever the planning commission and the board thinks, but there's a lot of good reasons and a lot of history that a lot of these subdivisions did that never caused this county to explode. And those subdivisions exist now. And the old guys that was on the board, they might have been a little more protective of the county than what we were. And they looked at it and thought it was good and never created a problem. And I don't think it'll create a problem again.
One more thing to say. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I kind of worked hard on this one, along with all the other people that have been putting. I want to bring up, I will mention one more thing just to get it on the record, maybe. And that's the elephant in the room that I brought up before, and it's been confirmed. And that's why you're bringing up something that happened actually after that. But why that ordinance in 1972, I believe it was, the 4 has not been changed, was made. And I've heard that ever since I've been in the county, why it was made, along with several others that we have had. Some of them changed, some of them whatever. And the reason being, we did not want to see Madison County, the powers that be did not want to see our county grow and our farmland used up for homes. We didn't want it to grow. So we limited it to 4, just like the 4 and 10, which I'm not saying we're not dealing with that. But those ordinances were made for one reason. And my question again to all of us is this what our attitude still is? If so, we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark on everything else going on in this county.
And Steve, I might also add that, people talk about the Ryan homes and the Syntex homes and people like that. They're not gonna come here and, if this has changed, and try to develop this county. Because there's no infrastructure here, and not only there's no infrastructure, there's no jobs for people. So those people are not gonna come here and try to build the $500,000-$600,000 houses when they can't sell them, there's nobody to buy. So that they're not gonna show up. It's like they looked at it when they did this in the early years. They was trying to help the little guy that builds 10 homes a year or 8 homes a year. They was trying to help him be able to stay in business and not overflood the county with houses.
Okay, and yes, Mike.
I've always been for the 8 number as well, but I would like to ask Legan, I mean, you said that you were a 6 guy. Have you got a particular reason why you like 6? Because I'm listening to the things here.
No, I kind of agree with the premise that if it were, I mean, again, working in it every day, dealing with people coming in, looking at the roads and trying to figure out what the division rights are, we're not changing the amount of lots that can be created. We're seriously saying 4 and 10. That's the same. I mean, I guess since you are doubling it, I just, that's just, again, I mean, just my opinion. But I think Pete and Faye make very good points, and I tend to agree. If it's 6 or 8, I don't think there's going to be a blink of the eye, and we're like, oh, why everybody moved to Madison? It'll just give some more opportunities. I mean, Madison is location. It is. I mean, it's not the city. It's not the suburbs. It's really what they call the exurbs. We're just outside of easy commuting area to Charlottesville, to Culpeper, and places around. We did 70 some houses, single family houses last year. 40 to 50 is probably more in the normal range. We've got a little over 6,000 housing units a year. How many more would this, by loosening up this subdivision ordinance, how many more houses could we see? I don't think we're going to see a lot more. It would provide builders with a little more opportunity, but I don't think it'd be radically, even at 8, I don't think it would be a radical change by any means. And I do think, I will say, this ordinance with doing the maintenance agreements and tying it in with, maintenance and the number of houses on the lot, it's actually quite a pretty good ordinance. I mean, really is written pretty well, I think.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Faye, Pete, I usually agree with you guys on a lot of things, and it's funny, we were on the committee together on this, and I don't think you guys are wrong about anything, specifically. With the 6 or the 8, we're still getting the road maintenance agreements and all of that, which is probably the biggest positive out of all of it. Whether it's 6 or 8 may be subjective, which means we could just go with 6. I'm inclined to use a little more caution than say it's probably not going to increase development. The fact that some roads already have 6, 7, 8, 9 houses, that to me is not a reason to bring it up to an old standard or a time before there was even a standard to kind of meet what was already done. I'll just tell you guys, my parents moved here about 50 years ago from Loudon. My dad said he was going to move away when Madison got its first stoplight. It has not changed drastically with the, any of the old ordinances and subdivision ordinances in place, but it has changed. And that is one thing that is going to accelerate. That rate is not going to be what it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 30 years ago. Everything has a way of accelerating, and I'm more for 6 because I don't want to look back and say, look at all these 8-house developments. Not for the driveways coming out on all the roads. I live off of 230. It's pretty crazy, but they're building houses everywhere.
They are.
I mean, you can't go anywhere in the county now without seeing houses more than you ever have before. That's all I got.
Okay, any other strong feelings? Okay.
Very well. To
should
the
we-
board.
Yes, let's see what other strong feelings we have.
My opinion, 6 at the most. And the reason being is we can always go back and go up to 8. But that's just a good starting point for me.
I'm for the 8. I agree with Pete and Faye completely that I think 8's not gonna hurt. It's not gonna cause any great growth. It's gonna give people an opportunity if they have a lot and they have 2 lots above it and they may wanna let one of their children build on it, take it up to 8. I think 8 is a good number.
Mr. Jewett?
I'm inclined for 6 right at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, I am inclined for 6 too, at this point. I mean, 8 doubles it. I would be inclined to leave it at 4 if I didn't think that 6 would bring a lot of these roads into conformance. You know, I think, you know, going to 6 will bring them into conformance. But Pete, the ones you're talking about, you know, Lade Village, Happy Hills, all that stuff there, all those subdivisions are state maintained roads, right?
They are.
And
Yeah.
I don't know that Leyden Village, that was right from the get-go, wasn't it?
The one in Shelby, I know was.
But anyhow, I mean,
Doesn't matter what the road.
we will be working on a comp plan, and that'll be a perfect time for us to say we would like to see subdivisions here, you know, in this area or that sort of thing, and we can do that. So and Faye scares me when she says, oh, there's a lot of land that's been sold in the last 3 months. So a lot of land's been sold. They're gonna want to do something with it. Okay, well, it really does. I think if you do the math, you know, bringing in families costs us more than not bringing them in here. So I could go on, and I will later, but I'm going with 6. Right. Mr. Jackson, you still with us?
Yeah, Nathan's comments are spot on. Faye, very compelling arguments. Going back to the numbers of 2021, I think that we saw some dormancy in 90, and that kind of compounded to get the high, 71, 73 in 21. The other side of it is look at how Forest Lakes is creeping out closer and closer to Madison into Greene County. Also, Culpeper is doing the same thing at just a slower rate. 6 is a big shift on our zoning, or on the way our county's put together. 8 is a little bit just too much at this point.
Anything else from the board? To the public? Anybody in the public got a comment on this zoning ordinance change? All right. Very well. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, shall we try to take a vote right now and decide what to do with the numbers?
No,
I
don't.
Well,
wait till a workshop.
Non-binding. Second, this was not noticed for that purpose. And I believe, have we had the public hearing on this?
No.
we have not advertised.
I would not take a formal vote until you've had a public hearing.
Well, I
We're
would
going to
say,
advertise at 6.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. We're just
Is that-
asking, you know, like a straw poll, just see where the plan commission is for the advertisement. You know, I think it's, again, just my sort of observation, just it looks like, you know, the board would be in favor of 6. I would tend to probably want to advertise 6. If you're on the plan commission and find yourself in the 8 sort of category, if you agree with everything else that's in it, we've got a lot of other things part of this. My recommendation would be just to note your maybe support of 8, but if everything else is good, then I would probably recommend just voting for what we have. But it is a subtle increase. But counting the heads, it looks like to me we've got
We're about evenly divided.
we're pretty evenly
and there's-
divided.
there's
So,
division on the-
but I wouldn't take great offense at if we advertise at 6, we can't go up to 8. If we advertise at 8, we can always go down to 6.
I had a question. Maybe I'm confused. Who writes exactly what the advertised statement will be? What is
Yeah.
that?
Right. So the advertisement, we don't have to advertise the whole. So what I would do is make a very brief statement saying that there proposed changes to the subdivision ordinances, and I might make and the biggest change being going from 4 to 8 or 4 to 6 on a private road. Go to the web page, and this will be linked.
But you wouldn't mention just that as part of that ordinance. The other parts are extremely important, right?
Yes, but I'm not going to advertise the whole.
No, but you just make statements about
Right.
about road maintenance.
Road maintenance agreement, private road maintenance
Update,
agreements.
maintaining,
Right.
upgrading the road to the standards.
And then send people to a link that they can go to. Or
I'm just thinking about how that we want to make sure that we present this in a way that's not already
Typically,
but we know that's.
So if we took a straw poll, we could by straw poll recommend what the planning commission thinks the board direct. And then it's up to the board to decide.
well, and
Well-
you can do it either by a straw poll, but I think the cleaner way to do it is by the actual formal recommendation after the public hearing. That said, something tells me that
So how we advertise it? 8 or 6?
Well, here's my suggestion. I say, sounds like, we got 4 of us saying 6. Charlotte thinks 8. So we advertise at 6. If we come in and we hear public comment and a recommendation other than 6 at the joint meeting, then we will table it and have another public hearing advertising at a different amount. But if we advertise at 6,
But you're advertising it's something that the planning commission never approved or agreed to.
Well, can we
I'm just,
Well, I would say we could advertise at 8, and then we could always bring it down, which it sounds like the board would most likely vote to bring it down. And if the plan commission as a whole wants to endorse 8, send it back to the board, then the board can do what they want. If they want to take it down to 6, they can take it down to 6. It's sort of like a tax rate. You can advertise it for greater and bring it down. And it sounds like the board would do that. So
Right, so our best bet is what, look at this as the planning commission at the workshop, make a decision then.
Well,
and-
I don't know if we're really I think the planning commission is going to be divided on 8 or 6. So
Yeah, well, we'll go with the majority.
yeah, I would go with the 8 since that seems, again,
correct?
I think it's the majority.
Yeah, but would it change if the board, if y'all recommended 8, if we advertise at 8 and ultimately you recommended 8, and then the board changes it to something other than 8, is that a substantive change?
my
I'm
instinct
thinking
tells me.
yes, but go ahead.
I think you can go lower, but I will have an answer for you on that. I close the business tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the safe is to go a little higher and bring it down.
Okay.
I think we may have a public comment out here. Would
I
you
would recommend going the most restrictive number first, and then you can do less restrictive. Most restrictive is 6, advertise 6. You can do less restrictive, going up to 8.
can't go up if you advertise six.
No, it works backwards with tax rate. When you get the tax rate, yeah, that's not right back there. In this situation.
It's kind of
For
opposite.
Citizens, the eight number is better.
Who is he?
So the most restricted is six. Advertise at six, you can always make it less restricted. Okay.
Yeah.
If you advertise at six, we can't go up. If everybody comes in and fills the room up and we advertise
Mhm.
at six, correct me if I'm
All
wrong,
right.
Sean, we can't go to eight.
That is correct.
But if we advertise at six, the board wants six, they can come back.
All right.
I mean, at eight.
And then advertise at eight, they can come down to six.
And
Well,
what-
and as I said, I will give you a definitive answer
Yeah,
by close
tomorrow.
of business tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. So we will wait for Mr. Greg to check this out.
So
And-
if this is, again, I suspect, again, I think, I mean, honestly, if you went to six, we're having this conversation, it's not like it's a secret. I mean, I think if we even advertise at six and went to eight, I think we'd probably be okay. But just to be safe, I think 8 to 6 is probably and we'll see what Sean finds out. But if we do get that back, then is the consensus on this to move this forward October 5th then?
Yes.
All right, to do that,
I think
we
so.
we would have to have this ready before, well, we'd have to make
I
a
mean,
decision tonight in
no,
order to
well-
advertise it.
Well, what you could
No.
do is you could address this. When is your next work session?
21st.
You could discuss this at that work session. And if we have, some indication, I'm not sure how the advertising will fall for that, but depending on that, we just take care of it.
Yeah, it'd have to be advertised the next day, so the ad would have to already have gone out. Yeah, it'd have to go out into next weekend, next Friday.
So right now, as it stands, we would advertise at 8, and if Sean comes back tomorrow and says yes, if we advertise at 8, we can go to 6, then we're cool, right?
That's the way
Everything's cool.
That's the way I would look at it. Yeah.
In this regard, this may be a circumstance, and in other counties, this happens with some frequency. The Planning Commission has one public hearing, the Board of Supervisors has a different public hearing, because they have different advertising requirements. It used to be Albemarle County routinely did something different from what their Planning Commission recommended.
That doesn't lead to confusion.
Well, right now, the
By having two different ordinances out there being proposed. I mean, is the question at this point essentially is what is going back to what Cardi says, is that if both boards agree that with Sean's approval that we can advertise at 8 and go to 6, then are we at that point? Or are we saying that the change is substantial enough between the two, the 6 and the 8? We need a determination, and we need a public hearing on either one.
I think Sean will have that
Does that
answer
make
for us
sense?
tomorrow.
I understand the question, and I hope to have an answer by close of business tomorrow.
Okay, and really, the only time constraint here is whether we have this ready for advertising in October. Is that correct?
That's right.
So if we push it to November, is that
It's no big.
not a?
Yeah, it's not a.
Okay.
We're going to be busy either way, so.
So if we
Yeah.
find out that this works, is acceptable, then we can go
Yeah, I
forward.
think the code's going to be fairly vague on a substantial change. And
Yeah.
honestly, even like I said, I'll just repeat myself, even going from 6 to 8 or 8 to 6, we haven't, I think that's, I'd rather go, like I say, rather go up than down up. But I think we're in pretty good ground to advertise at 8. And if the board so chooses to remove it to 6, I think that's,
Okay, so we're, in order to be ready for October, we can advertise the 8th. If Sean finds that's okay, we're ready to go. And if not, we'll have to re-advertise a different.
at 6, if that's
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
right.
Okay, well, in that case, I guess we will wait till the workshop and make our vote. Okay.
But if we do get feedback that
Yeah.
lowering it, we'll go forward with the 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion on the changes to the subdivision ordinance there? Yeah, I think really that's the main thing on that. Okay, I was hoping we would have this done by now. Okay, accessory dwelling units. Peter, you asked to make a introduction to that.
Yeah, this came up at first of year two, as everybody remembers. The board asked us, the planning commission, to study the ADU issue.
That's a good idea.
And we did as a committee, and we had some interviews, and I think we probably worked through 5 or 6 drafts. And have discussed it on numerous occasions at workshop meetings. And my impression of where we stand are that the commission generally agrees with with much of this, but there are 2 provisions in the requirements and restrictions, part of the proposed ordinance that are at issue. I'll dispose of the easier one first. Ligon has suggested that instead of 800 square feet limit on ADUs, that we substitute 1,000 square feet. We have not really discussed that as a planning commission. And the other issue is obviously is the owner occupancy issue. And I'd like to say a word on that. There are strong views, as everybody remembers. We did take a straw poll on this. The results were 5-3 to eliminate that provision. But at the end of that session, I think there was general consensus that we pass that issue on to the board. This is my feeling on the owner occupancy issue is one that, as I understand it from the research I've done, most of these ADU provisions, not all by any means, but most of them that have been enacted in the United States do have an owner occupancy provision. Secondly, I think it is probably beyond dispute that if you do have an owner on the property is going to be taken care of better, maintained better. And the third issue, which I think is the most important issue, is the fact that if this becomes kind of a business proposition for outside people to buy up pieces of land and put ADUs on them, that you're going to have an issue of housing density. And I don't think that, as I've understood feelings of the supervisors, particularly Carty, that this is intended to satisfy a lack of housing in this county, but rather it's intended on a much more personal basis to accommodate individuals who have relatives or children they'd like to accommodate on their property. That someone wants to create a Thomas Jefferson-like separate office, home office to work remotely, that sort of thing, and that language is in the ordinance. On the other side of the coin, Sean has raised an issue which I think is an interesting issue by identifying a case from the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. It's a case called Hignell Stark versus City of New Orleans. And in that case, the city, as an accommodation to tourists, wanted to authorize short-term rentals as opposed to our ADU situation, which would only permit long-term rentals, but wanted to accommodate short-term rentals in residential areas. And it was causing a lot of problems. And there was what was called the primary residence requirement, which required that the owner of the property or the owner of the property renting it out would have to have that place as that person's primary residence. And that obviously has some similarity to the situation we've been talking about, and it would augur against an owner occupancy provision. I do think that situation, which involves short-term rentals in a business situation and was decided on Commerce Clause grounds, is probably distinguishable from what we've been talking about here in Madison County. But it is a potential concern. So where do we go from here? I'm without an owner occupancy provision. I've sort of lost some of the interest that I had in pursuing this ordinance at all. The fact of the matter is that the basic interests that the ordinance is drafted seeks to accommodate or having a place to put your mother-in-law, a place to put your child or your office or your nanny or your caregiver if you're old and need a caregiver. And much of that can be accommodated with a building permit. We don't need an ADU ordinance to do that unless we're talking about a separate unit altogether, a standalone unit. For example, if I want to have a place, even a separate place with a separate entrance and so forth in my house to accommodate my mother-in-law, I can do that. I can get a building permit and build onto the house. If I have a garage with a second floor, I put a second floor on it, or I have a barn with a second floor, I can go out and get a building permit and put an accommodation that would satisfy all these interests. So there's another way of approaching the goal of accommodating the interests that have been identified without the ADU provision and without having to address this very difficult owner occupancy provision. I went, as a final comment, I went to the August 7 Board of Supervisors meeting, and there was a good deal of concern expressed by supervisors about proliferation of housing units in this house, increase of housing density. And so that, that might cause us all to step back from this and say, do we really need this ADU provision? Can we accomplish what we all want to accomplish without it? That's all I have to say.
Okay, Nathan? Yeah.
Sorry, Danny, I'm going to jump in here.
Oh, that's right, Danny.
Um,
Go ahead, you done heard my story.
Um,
I'm gonna repeat it, so you don't have to worry about it.
Peter, I really appreciate those comments. I've been thinking about it too, and I've only been on the commission for about a year and a half, and I think the board's done a good job of what they do decide to ask us to look into or not. And I've recently started, stepping back and saying, well, they kind of say, hey, can you guys make this work? And we start doing it. And yeah, you can pretty much make anything work. But sometimes I think stepping back and saying, do we want to, personally recommend something is worth looking at. This feels like a square peg in a round hole sort of topic right here. It creates a lot of other issues. There are other ways around it. Like you said, you can add an addition on your house. A garage, breezeway to a garage, separate, dwellings. If you have more than 6 acres, you can build another house. You don't need an ADU. It's kind of just getting down to that tiny little, that 3 to 6 acre. How can we cram these houses in there? And to me, it's a density issue. It's overly complicated. It doesn't seem like a Madison thing. And I'm just opposed to the whole thing altogether. I appreciate all y'all's work on it, the committee. But that's where I'm at.
Danny, did you want to? We're waiting for it.
I've already said my comments.
Okay. Pete?
Well, yeah, I got several comments. The problem I'm having here, understanding this is, I always assumed that when the planning commission took a vote, and the majority of the vote was what we needed to do, that's what we did. Not one person keep insisting that it need to be put in there. Now, if he won, I support him. But I won, he should support me. And I keep having problem understanding why this keeps showing up in this ordinance. We voted to take this out of the ordinance. Now, if the Board of Supervisors, they're gonna see all of our notes and know what we had, wanna put it back in there, they have that authority. But one person don't have the authority to change this, and this keep getting put back in there based on what the planning commission did by the majority. It said, we don't want it in there.
That's the owner occupancy.
The owner occupancy. We clearly said by vote, we don't want it in there.
Mhm.
But we keep seeing it over and over again, and every meeting there is, we need that in there, we need that in there. You've lost, support me. If I lose, I support you.
Other comment?
Well, I think it's probably my fault for keeping it in there. I try to make it clear.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
I asked,
Yeah.
okay, for this, first of all, I asked that Ligon put in here county planner comment regarding the above number 7 at the July 20th Planning Commission workshop meeting. A straw poll was taken. The majority of members voted to remove this requirement. And since Clay and I are the only 2 on this board that are at those workshops, I asked that he put it back in there with those comments to know that you guys had decided to remove it, but I wanted that in front of the rest of the board.
That should be put under his comments, not in the ordinance, in my opinion, Marty. Because it makes me think the planning commission voted, and they didn't stand by what they voted for. That's the only issue I got. I don't have a problem with the ADU. I only have a problem with when the planning commission votes. Let's leave it like they voted, and then you guys are more than happy to change it. We just recommend it.
Okay. Any other? I do have one I kind of expand on a little bit on what Peter said and what Nathan said. I have a concern, just a fundamental concern here, upon the lapse or termination of the ADU, since if I understand it correctly, goes with the applicant, which was the idea that we had. Following that, we have specifically and intentionally created a non-conforming use if we have an ADU, because then we have a less than 3 acres or less than 6 acres, excuse me, with 2 dwelling units on it, which is specifically a non-conforming use. It violates the.
Well, not if we adopt an ADU ordinance. It wouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
The
Correct.
ADU ends at some point. And this is what I've said repeatedly. This is a permanent fix for a temporary problem. The ADU ends with the applicant leaving or selling or whatever. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you mean the owner.
Oh, well, no,
Because it could run with the land. I mean, it could go with the land. It would just, the owner would have to, in order to.
throughout the discussion of this, it was specifically stated that it would be going with the applicant. That was my understanding?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I think that could
What's
be.
that, Clay?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. In that case, once the applicant leaves, dies, sells the property, whatever.
What happens?
Then you have, and you can't say tear it down. Somebody else bought it and they own it. You have a non-conforming use.
Could
that
they
we
come
have-
in and get a special use permit to do it?
Well, I think what actually happens in that circumstance is it kind of limits the market they can sell it to. They need to sell it to a family member, caretaker, whatever that circumstance was, but you still have the owner occupancy requirement. So the owner could do that and then put whomever they want in the accessory dwelling unit. But it does create a somewhat unique circumstance because they would have to be occupying it as the owner.
I'm still not sure that's satisfying the question that I have about it. I mean,
You don't have the 6 acres there.
if
If the real estate changes hands,
Mhm.
then the ADU component goes away and
Right.
it cannot be used as an Airbnb. And I think that's where we get into this issue of the square peg in the round hole, or just pushing off a problem.
I think I understand, Mr. Carpenter, your point. It's the 3 acres per use
Yeah.
is the issue. It's
We've
not that there
created
are
a
2
non-conforming
dwellings
use,
on the
yeah,
property.
yeah.
But I understand your concern now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Pete.
Steve, Sean, a question. If we pass this ordinance, if the board or somebody, planning commission, whoever passes this ordinance as written or whatever, is it legal? I mean, would you have problems fighting this in court?
The
I think it's important.
I think there are going to be challenges to all of this. There are already challenges. And I solicited input from other county attorneys through the state. They refer to this particular issue as the STR wars, meaning that there is litigation about this particular issue pretty much all over the country.
But the STR is short-term rental.
But that is correct, but most of the context for it is the short-term rental in an accessory dwelling unit.
Mhm.
I keep wanting to call it alternative dwelling unit, but it's clearly accessory dwelling unit.
Well, the difference could be that it's in a non-conforming parcel as well, right?
That could create its own set of problems. I think the real issue with this comes down to the possibility of creating additional dwellings on lots, which is a little different from what we have done in the past. And making certain that we have followed all of the ramifications of that. And we talked about one of them with regard to the, for the 4-on-1 rule. I mean, how does that affect it? And there are lots of areas where this can be affected. I think the fear, and it's been articulated by several of you, is someone coming to the northern end of the county in all likelihood, or even the southern end for that matter, buying a large parcel of land, putting their alternative, their additional dwelling units, their accessory dwelling units on them, on each lot. So rather than having, let's say it's 4 houses, they can put 8 houses, and they're all going to be rentals. And is that the type of development that we want? Remember the other element of that. You're going to be attracting real estate investors who in all likelihood don't live here, have never lived here, have no intention of living here. And what they will do is they will appear in front of this board. They will get their permits and they will flip these things to probably large property owners. Nationally, you will probably see some national rental companies potentially going in. And Madison County is not the only county dealing with this. I think it was the city of Suffolk, which I think is an entire county, if I'm not mistaken, has comparable issues. And where they're getting their growth pressure is from the naval bases and some of the other things down on the on that corridor, on your way to the beach. But those are the issues that are sort of percolating on these issues as we speak.
Yes.
But somebody clarify something for me, because maybe I'm trying to overthink this thing. If we call it the ADU, which the definition says, an independent living facility, but it could be part of your house, a suite. It could be, it says part of an existing or planned single-family dwelling, part of a garage or something, attached garage, whatever. The problem comes with that doesn't count against the 3 acres.
Right.
That's still a 3-acre thing. Problem happens when we get to that detached unit. And the 6 acres that would be required.
Yeah.
Right.
And without an ADU ordinance, the person can still have the mother-in-law suite in the house. They can add on to the house.
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true.
That's what I'm
put a
asking.
separate
You're talking
dwelling?
about, you go down there and put a separate kitchen, a separate bathroom, a separate
Right.
dwelling unit. I don't think that's true.
Oh, they're all over the place, though.
It's happening all the time.
Well, I don't doubt
They
that
get
it's
their
not
building
happening.
permit and they.
With a separate kitchen and everything?
Yes, absolutely. That's been going on for years. Seriously.
Huh? With a separate
Um,
kitchen?
My neighbor.
Well, you are in violation. I would expect you to go down.
Well, he does have the acreage. I mean,
Oh, he's got the acreage.
yeah, I mean, well,
But why is
I
it such important?
think that I don't
Yeah,
mean,
we're losing
I think
it here.
we kind of complicated. I mean, it was really just,
Yeah, Nathan.
Ligon, correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I'm aware, as far as a building permit is concerned, they address bedrooms and your drain field, right? Like bedrooms is the only limiting factor on a building permit. It doesn't have to do. There might be height limitations. You can have as many bathrooms as you want. You can have as many kitchens as you want. You can have as many spare rooms, offices, anything as you want. It's bedrooms, right?
yeah, but
And that's for the drain field.
And that's
if you've
that's
got-
related to the
if
drain
you have
field.
independent living facilities in a house, then it probably would kick into a multi-family dwelling. If you had, and then that would require,
with a single address.
yeah, that's a better question.
That's why my old house doesn't have a kitchen in the basement.
Right. But I still think we've kind of, it's pretty, to me, it's very straightforward. And we've done it in Luray for years, and we added it years ago. It's, again, kind of get back to those 3 to 5, 10 to 19.9. You come in for a special use permit, and you can kind of put scenarios if someone came bought, but in reality, you still have to come through this commission and board. If they come in to get a building permit and they've got 4 acres and they want to put a 1,000-foot ADU up, they've got to come in here and get a special use permit. I really just see this as a niche opportunity that just a fairly small amount of people would take advantage of. Most of it would probably be a caretaker situation or a child. And again, ultimately you control it by the special use. And you can kind of write in any sort of, you have these supplemental regulations that say things like you can't make it a short-term rental. If I sell the whole property, the next person, I believe the special use permit could run with the land and the person could come in and inherit that. But if they move off the property, this is very common in other zoning ordinances. If you don't live on I know of a friend in Albemarle who has a duplex and he has to live in the property. It's a below, lower level living. He has to live in the property. That's again fairly common. So if you bought it and you knew that, in order to make it a rental, just rent it to a teacher or whoever, I think that's fair enough. So I look at it very basic and very narrow, just not real complicated. I don't, but yeah, it is more density. I don't think there's no question about that. And if that's something that concerns you, but to me, it's a very simple, straightforward proposal with very clear supplemental regulations.
All right,
I think that if I may just second something that Sean said. Once the board grants a special use permit, it's going to be very, for an ADU, assuming that we go down that road, it's going to be very hard for the board to not deny special use permits in the future beyond that initial grant. And there isn't going to be a whole lot of basis for distinguishing these situations. And I think the board will find that it has great difficulty distinguishing situations and approving one, but rejecting another.
Yeah, that kind of same way with campgrounds and a lot of different things. Interesting enough, if you go to the news and just kind of look at the news on ADUs, Dothan City Commission delays action short-term rentals. Pittsburgh Council okays ADUs in certain areas. It's it's being talked about everywhere. It's just sort of interesting.
I guess what it comes down to for us is, would this benefit the county? For the sake of 2 or 3 people, would this be beneficial to the county?
I'd like to hear what the board's got to say, so I could interject more into how they feel, what they think. Give me some more ideas. If that's okay.
Well, you know me.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Now,
Oh, dear.
Cardi, my fault.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of comments on this, and a lot of what I guess my concerns relate to what Mr. Gregg has said. You're putting in a set of complex rules for a situation, and what I don't like about complex rules is, first of all, the more complex they are, the more people are going to game the system, particularly outside interests, investor developer interests. Number 2, you increase the probability that this policy will lead to undesirable, unforeseen consequences. Now, I asked Mr. Webb a while back to give me an estimate on the number of parcels in this county that are in A1 and they fit the 3 to 5.99 parcel lot size, and also C1 that went from 10 acres to 19.9. There are 2,539 parcels in this county. That's over 1/4 of the parcels in this county that fall under the A1 3 to 5.9 acres. There are roughly 173 parcels in C1 that are between 10 and 19.9 acres. So we're gambling with a policy that could affect 1/4 of the parcels in the county. And I don't want to put the county in that kind of position. I think there's just too much latitude for abuse. What I think is a good intended policy to try to help folks that live in the county and make it easier for them, because they already can't compete with outside money. we could be putting them in a worse situation. Where now we've created a circumstance where these places could be built, developed, and then flipped. So now we've just gone back and hurting the very people that we intended to help in the first place. That's my concern with this policy. And it doesn't seem like the Planning Commission has got it nailed down completely anyway. Not that I'm faulting the Planning Commission at all. But this is just what worries me, is that I think that we're opening ourselves up to some problems. And with this being a quarter of the parcels in the county, I think we can make a colossal mistake if we aren't careful with this. That's my opinion on it.
Anybody else?
I think he's right. Before I got here tonight, I was all about this. I thought this was really a good idea. You know, I could see me having a daughter build a lot on my property for my daughter to take care of me or something. And then the more I've heard tonight, this could become a nightmare. I think it really could become a nightmare. I don't think enough's been worked out that it's what we need right now. I really don't.
Got anything, Dustin?
I mean, back to the building part of it, you can do everything but a kitchen. So you can build a little kitchenette, things like that on an addition. You know, so.
But if you start putting other people in that, then you are in violation of their ordinances.
Other people in what?
In this, if you build a complete dwelling, even if it's attached, and you put other people in there, now you've turned it into a multi-use dwelling, and that is against their ordinance.
I got you, but I mean,
You know.
Yeah.
That's. So
I just think it's too complicated at this point.
Well, so I think it's not that complicated. Of course, I was the one who brought this up, and I had the examples to go back. But Mr. Gregg says that there's possibility of creating more dwellings on lots. Yeah, absolutely. So does 8 on a private drive, for crying out loud. Of course, the owner occupancy really fixes that. Now, when we were here before and Pete said, yeah, it's up to the board to approve or deny a special use permit, and I agree. It's just that I don't want to approve one person and deny another person. So here's what I've written up, which I think might, almost all of our ordinances have a purpose and intent. So listen to this. So I wrote this up so we as a board, you as a planning commission, can look at it and say, no, it doesn't meet this purpose and intent. ADUs serve multiple purposes for their owners, purposes that may change over time. The purpose and intent of this ordinance is to provide for the development of accessory dwelling units for the following: creating a convenient living arrangement that allows someone to age in place, providing a home for a loved one in need of care, creating a place for a caregiver to stay, thereby increasing security, home care, and companionship, providing housing for relatives or friends, providing space for non-paying guests, just come in and visit for the weekend, earning extra income from renting to a tenant. Note that I did not say renting to tenants. Okay, so that's the 6 reasons. If we had that in the ordinance, you need something to lean on. So a person comes in here, buys 16 acres, divides it into four lots, 4-acre lots, and says, yeah, I'm gonna put up 8 houses. Well, that doesn't meet our purpose and intent of this whole thing. So anyhow, that was my solution to remove owner occupancy and put something in there to give us some leverage, Pete. So this one's not ready for prime time.
No, it's potential can of worms, yes.
This could be something that
during the comp plan. We've got to go, I think, it can be modified, and I think Cardi has great suggestions, and I understand, and this is what we're all here for, is to talk these things out. This could be something to hold in our back pocket for a few more months, maybe another year. We talk about housing in the comp plan.
Yeah.
I think it could be something that we could take to the general public part of the comp plan as a strategy because we got to talk about affordable housing in the comp plan. This could be one of the things we kind of put out there to the public and see what folks think about it.
Mr. Jackson, you still with us?
Oh, yeah. You'll make compelling arguments both ways. We all know the intended use of this. The problem that I think we run into is enforcement is not one of our strong suits. And we may be creating more problems going on into the future by trying to address one issue right now.
Ligon, what's the possibility that we could get some firm information? We have some differences of opinion about whether somebody can got a building permit to put mother-in-law suite in.
If you have the acreage, then we,
that's
as far as,
yeah.
If you have a house on 3 acres and you want to just add a whole new quote apartment, let me talk to James. He's out. He'll be back. Friday.
I mean, I have, for example, I have a neighbor who just actually did this. He converted his garage to an apartment for his parents or his wife's parents. Now he has more than 3 acres there. I mean, it's like 10 acres, so that's not their problem.
Right.
But we seem to have some differences of opinion among everybody whether you can do this or not. So if it's possible to not have to have a special ordinance to do this, we need to know that. And if it's not possible, maybe changing that would be a way to not have this special use permit put into place here.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that Madison will, as always, allow, as long as you can assign that minimum acreage.
Yeah.
That into itself is a lot different than most ordinances. It's, I'm going to call it progressive, but I mean, that's and a lot of folks in the county take advantage of that.
But if we can get some, obviously, like Cardi said, this is not ready for prime time. So if we can get some input on that, I think we might, as a committee, as a commission, we may want to look at alternatives to this.
And it really might be something that we could put out, like I said, not to keep beating the dead horse here, but it really could be a comp plan sort of suggestion to get feedback from some folks.
Mr. Jewett, could I ask you a question just about your stats? I misunderstood maybe or didn't hear what you said. A quarter of our land
of the A1
in A1. That is A1.
A quarter of the number of parcels. We're not
That are
talking
less
about
than-
total acreage. We're talking about the number of parcels in the county.
Parcels in A1.
In A1 that fall in between the 3 to 5.99 acres.
And not zoned R1 or anything.
No.
I'm not surprised at that. Okay, and the other comment, being practically the oldest one here, is again, we're talking about comp plan, we're talking about all this, and there's a word that's come up tonight. If I'd made a little tally, I don't know how many times it would have come up. Starts with a D. Density.
Damn it.
Density, density, density. I didn't say anything else. Density. That's on our minds. Obviously,
right.
because
That's a
every
good
one of
point.
you,
Yep.
when you've cited your rationale for whatever you believe, you think it's going to affect density or impact density in some way, good or bad or whatever. So I think all of us need to really decide, what is this thing called density and where is it going to apply? And are we talking about density of people, density of houses, density of cows? What are we talking about? And we need to think about that. And when we get that nailed down and really have an open and honest conversation about what we mean, I think a lot of these things, we can agree on that, then a lot of this we'll see it more clearly as to what's happening right now. And I know you all think I'm doomsday, but I'm going to do some more research on some of this land being sold. And we haven't heard yet, but you'll know soon enough. Pete, am I right? He knows.
I think maybe
So we just need to figure out what's happening here and make sure we're all talking about the same thing.
yeah, we haven't had public comment yet, and I think we have somebody back there.
He has a comment down at the end.
Yeah. Yes, please. You've been very patient.
My name is Mike Fisher, and most of you know me. I used to be on the planning commission. I want to talk about both of these ordinances tonight, please. And that's why I waited till the end. I think we've lost really sight. I don't know what you're gonna do in the next comp plan, but in the one that we did last time, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but it's the vision statement, it mentions rural environment. In goal number 1, right out of the bat, rural, agriculture, all these things. And I came back here in 1995 from the Army. You know, Virginia has grown some, and that's where I'm from. Madison County has grown some. And most of the county still does not have internet and does not have internet and probably still won't for 5 years. Now, I disagree with Fay Oots when she says the horse has left the barn. You want to see the horse that's blown up the barn, go to Greene County.
Well,
Because in 1995, Greene County and Madison County was very comparable. Extremely comparable, but not anymore. You can't control all this stuff. You can't control 4 houses on an 8. Go down to Main Post Office Road, a church road, and you can see, and I'll get back to that in a minute, it has exploded. It is a mess, and I don't see anybody trying to fix it. I see you trying to add more problems to it by letting them build more houses down there. You can't count the houses you cannot. This board, especially the planning commission, I've heard auxiliary unit tonight. If you do pass that, get back to that in a minute. Family subdivision, grandfather, on and on. My problem is, if you can't count it, I know no one else will be able to count it. You argue it amongst yourselves. So I say if you put an auxiliary unit on it, you have a grandfather lot, you build another house. I know what you do increase. You increase traffic. And you increase 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds running up and down, and you increase tension on the road. We just did this auxiliary unit 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Cardi. It failed to pass 9-0. I don't know why it's back. I do not know why it's back. It's a disaster. You will not be able to control that. You think you can control how many kitchens that are in a house? How about how many kids have come back to these houses and live in these houses today? I know for a fact that there are people living in these little houses that you buy up here on 29. We're not controlling that. I can go out here and rat them out, but they'll build them somewhere else. The growth, we talked about the growth. 70 houses a year, say we abandon 6 of them and tear down 4. 10 years, we got 600 houses. We're certainly not as rural as we were in 95, but we're going to be a whole lot ruraler, if that's a word, than other counties around us. And yeah, they're coming. You want to know where all this money is going? This money is going to people that have a lot of money. That's where this land's going. 900 acres just for sale right behind me. And somebody rich is going to buy that because they are asking a huge amount of money for it. And you're very concerned about farmers. And, we sold our property to Cresseray for about $3,500 an acre. Double that now. So I'm not feeling too sorry for people that own 200 or 300 acres. I don't feel sorry for them. They can work out a way to sell part of it and keep part of it. Okay. We got enough grandfathered lots. Now you're gonna open two houses to 3.1 acres? Nuts. Absolutely nuts. And you're talking about lawsuits? What that's gonna do is somebody's gonna attack the 3-acre rule. Because you will be so confused of who puts what where, you won't be able to defend the 3-acre rule. And Rappahannock defends 25 acres. I hope we can hold on to 3. They say? Well, they got more 25 acres than we have 3. Only thing left now is the 4 subdivisions in 10 years and land use. I beg you, don't erode that more. Don't destroy what we have left in rural Madison. Leave it as rural as we can keep it, as long as we can keep it. I'll go back to Main Church, Baptist Church Road. It was a mess, and now we have 2 trailers sitting down there that they have abandoned. I just go back to who's in control of what. There's a 3rd trailer sitting down there that's been there for years. Nobody lives in it. I don't know what, I guess you can do that further. But it's all, that whole road down there is absolutely a mess. And I think if you go to 8, you're going to have a whole lot more of it. The last thing I want to say is this Board of Supervisors has had at least 2 or 3 that I know of, people coming in here arguing about roads. Who's going to maintain what road? We didn't solve it that I know of. And I think going to 8 or 6 is going to add to your problem, not lessen it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? You want?
Anything from the board?
You want to give up?
Yeah, I
Okay.
surrender.
You want to? Yes. Pete.
That's something I would want to add. I'm involved in selling a lot of real estate throughout the county. And I can tell you that what we see and what I see happening is the people that are buying this land in Madison County are looking for big chunks. They're rich people. They got a lot of money. They don't want no development. They want to buy as much as they can to keep me and you as far away from them as they can possibly do it. So the land is not being bought up to be developed. The land that we see that we're selling, they want to keep as much acreage as they possibly can. And most of them that I talk to, they don't want land use, they don't want anything. They want to buy their land, they got plenty of money, they want to pay their taxes and be left alone. And I see that over and over every time we get a fairly good sized piece of land to sell. We've got a couple now. And it's the same way. The people that are interested want a big chunk of land and leave them alone. And I see that happening more and more.
That's kind of hopeful, actually. Any other? Do you want to adjourn first, or you want us to?
Done. Y'all go first.
All right. Are we ready to have a motion to adjourn here?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
For the board, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second, all in favor?
We have no idea what to do about it. Yeah. I was hoping Carly was going to give that. It's really soft.
I figured it'd be like small, like feel like just.
Yeah, I like it. I like the people. Well, he's got an issue against him right now, which is a hopeful sign.
Mr. Jackson,
Steve,
are you
in
still there?
tomorrow morning?
Are you at home tomorrow morning?
Mr. Jackson, are you still there?
Should be, yes.
Could I give you a call?
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
Comprehensive.
Yep.
Are you and I on the
If you
adjourn?
miss me, just leave a message and I'll give you a call. If you miss me, just give me a message and I'll give you a call back.
Yeah, I can't really hear you. Everybody's talking. I'll just text you, sir.
Oh, well, okay.
I would say Chairman. You made a big mess of it. 15.
I think we got the gist of it, though. We pretty much understood you.
Man, it is miserable.
I knew he was patient.
I'll go through.
It's not gonna take 5 years.
No, I didn't hear that. No.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Everybody else speaks. Fell over.